What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another brand new installment of For the Love of Wrestling. I, of course, am your host, the Renegade of Wrestling, JJ Williams. Happy Wednesday. How is everybody doing this morning? Got NWA Powerrr to discuss, got WWE NXT to discuss. Lots of good stuff to discuss and process. 3 really good hours of television that were presented to us yesterday. First and foremost, NWA Powerrr. And again, make sure you guys are downloading the CW app, watching each episode of NWA Powerrr, because for all of the management problems that the National Wrestling Alliance has had in the past, the talent are on that show every week busting their asses. And they deserve some better exposure. Some of them have been on that big scale before, whether it's guys like EC3 or Paul Burchill, Mike Knox, Trevor Murdoch, and there's others, man, that really, really easily could slide into some of the best divisions that are out there right now, whether it's the team of the Immortals, Kratos and Odinson, whether it's women like Tiffany Nieves. They definitely deserve the spotlight shined on them. I see the big boss man is here and multitasking. So good on you there, Jeff. So NWA Powerrr kicked off this week with tag team action as the Fixers take on Tim Storm and his mystery opponent, JAC. I don't know much about the Fixers nor JAC, but Tim Storm, former NWA World Heavyweight Champion, definitely a good worker in his right. We had a good old school smash mouth tag team match here, in which the Fixers were able to pick up the victory over the former NWA champion and his partner. Like I said, this was just a solid smash mouth fight. Like, if I had to draw comparisons to some old school NWA that I've seen on DVD and VHS, it took me back to like the Horsemen versus the Russians. You know, whether it was Arn and Oli or Arn and Toli versus the Russians. Good stuff here between these 4 men. I don't know if this is going to turn into a rivalry, since JAC was just a mystery partner for Tim Storm and they ate the loss here. But if it does, I'm here for it. And yeah, Paul Burchill on my TV screens was not on my 2024 bingo card either, boss man. But at the same time, it's so good to see him back in action, because he was just saddled with shitty gimmick after shitty gimmick. You know, Pirate Paul trying to capitalize on the success of Pirates of the Caribbean, and then we won't even think about the incest angle they were trying to do with him and Katie Lee. Yeah. But he's just wrestling in the NWA as Burchill. From there, we had Natalia Markova cutting a promo. She's trying to put over her match that's going to be next week against NWA World Women's Champion Kenzie Page. She talks about how she deserves the championship more than Kenzie. Says that they've been in the ring together, and Kenzie knows that Natalia Markova can beat her. Should be a fantastic match when we get that match next week on NWA Powerrr, part of the Hard Times TV tapings that they did. I've already messaged James Hebert from the Multiverse of Media, as he is a huge Natalia Markova fan, so that he can make sure he checks out that match next week. should be a banner. Kenzie Page has been doing great things with the women's championship, but I think Natalia Markova picking that belt up would just be, it would be the ultimate icing on the cake. I follow her on social, and within the last couple weeks, she's picked up championships in other promotions. I want to say she's picked up 2 different championships. I will try to have those for you come next week when we actually discuss the match. But to add the Burke to her collection as she's on this kind of belt collector run, chef's kiss. And yeah, Natalia winning the title equals James's viewership. Agreed. From there, we actually went into some women's action, and we had Taylor Rising versus Miss Star. Solid women's action here, good back and forth. Taylor Rising picks up a big victory here over Miss Star. Not really familiar with either woman. I think I've seen them each maybe once before. Not women that are definitely carrying the women's division, but they had a good enough match. It's something to check out in the near future. We then went to Kenzie Page for a promo, and she calls Natalia Markova tough and strong, but says that she cannot get the job done when it matters the most. She says Billy Corgan has handed her everything on a platter, and she drops the ball every single time. Great heel work here in this promo, but it almost made it, to me, look like Markova was now a shoe-in to get the title. With those type of words being used in the promo, you almost have to figure that this time she's going to win the big one so that she can silence Kenzie Page. She can silence the critics. It's very much the same type of promos that were used by Triple H back in 2004 during the run up to Chris Benoit's title match at WrestleMania 20. And I know, Chris Benoit, that's a bad word to say in wrestling. Whatever. It's the truth. It's the same type of promos that Hunter was cutting on Benoit. You're good, you're strong, you're tough, but you never can finish the big one. You never get the job done when it matters. Go to commercial, come back, and we have a Vampiro promo, if you can call it that. There's a tag team tournament going on, and our interviewer is trying to prompt Vampiro to discuss Alex Misery and Mecha Wolf, who he's kind of taken under his wing to cultivate and guide and mentor. And Vampiro's just like, what? Who? And kind of aloof during the promo. Very, very interesting the way they were framing this promo here. Not sure if Vampiro is doing something now that he doesn't want to do and it's coming out through his promo, or if this is part of the storyline, but I was intrigued. And that's the key when you're presenting these lower budget type of shows, is you've got to present that intrigue. And I'm curious to see what's going to happen next week with Alex Misery and Mecha Wolf under the guidance of Vampiro. Main event was tag team title action for the NWA World Tag Team Championship as the Immortals took on Blunt Force Trauma. Now, going in this match, the Immortals were the NWA United States Tag Team Champions, and in order to get this match, they had to surrender their titles. So essentially, you want a title shot, you relinquish your belt. You are no longer United States Tag Team Champions, and you get a shot at the World Tag Team titles. This was a hard-fought clash of behemoths. everything that I would expect between Kratos and Odinson and Blunt Force Trauma. Again, if you've never seen images of Blunt Force Trauma, look up the images of Doom from the early 90s, Ron Simmons and Butch Reed, when they still wore the masks. Very much the same kind of energy that Blunt Force Trauma gives off, whether it's an homage or whatever you want to call it. It's a tremendous throwback to that era. Blunt Force Trauma, though, got the victory. I was a little bit taken aback by that. I was a little bit caught off guard because I figured that if they were going to have the Immortals surrender the titles and relinquish them, they'd get elevated. They didn't. Where are the Immortals going to go from here? Are they going to get another title opportunity, considering that Aaron Stevens, the manager of Blunt Force Trauma, the former Damian Sandow, got involved, caused shenanigans? Are they going to get maybe another opportunity with a stipulation this time? Whether it's a steel cage match or whatever? Are they going to have to go back to the bottom and work their way back to the top? Or are they going to dissolve? Are we potentially going to get an Odinson versus Kratos feud coming out of this because of the loss? Don't know, but whatever we get from here, I'm looking forward to it. So that takes care of NWA Powerrr. I am going to take a moment, run our Friends of the Multiverse trailer so you can see where you can find and follow everybody associated with the Jeff Meacham Network Multiverse of Media. When we come back, we will discuss last night's episode of NXT.
And now, preview time. So let's take a look at what's coming your way.
And we are back. I see Walter is here now chanting NXT. It's too bad not everybody in the multiverse is that ecstatic about NXT. But I digress. Today's episode of NXT that we're going to discuss was kind of a little bit of a filler. It was a transition, as last week was the fallout from Stand and Deliver, and next week begins Spring Breakin'. So it was kind of a little interlude, if you will. Kind of got a couple of things to set up Spring Breakin'. But it was an awesome show, so let's get into it. Kicked off with Noam Dar taking on Dijak. And honestly, this was an awesome opening contest. I have not been a fan of Noam Dar's. I have not been quiet about my dislike of Noam Dar. He really took a beating here from Dijak, but was able to dish out some punishment of his own. Enough to get the victory here. Quite surprising, but at the same time, not really when you figure that Noam Dar had the rest of Metaphor at the ringside area. Dijak stands alone, but it was a good matchup here. And Noam Dar Now that Noam Dar is not confined to the Heritage Cup, I'm seeing more from him than I used to. Although there was a point during the match where he rolled to the outside to get like a 30-second break, almost like you would get at the end of a round in the Heritage Cup match. But yeah, just all in all, a lot of improvement from Dar as I see this. We then go backstage and we have Ava and Ilya Dragunov, and they're talking about how Ilya's match with Trick Williams is next week. Of course, the stipulation of that match is if Trick loses, Trick leaves NXT. Don't know how I feel about the booking of that, considering on this show we're covering was Mello versus Trick in a steel cage. I feel like they should have given Trick a week off, use next week to have a big promo in the middle of the ring to set up Trick versus Ilya for week 2 of Spring Breakin'. Have that be the main event. What do you guys think? Do you think it's fair for Trick to have to go from a cage match one week to a title match against the Mad Dragon the following week? Or should he get a week break there, considering Spring Breakin' is a 2-week event, and you're probably going to want to cap off your big event over 2 weeks with a world title match? We also find out that Ilya Dragunov is going to be in action tonight, an open challenge of sorts. Any member of the locker room, whoever is the first person to get to the ring, is going to get a match with Ilya. We then get a Tatum Paxley video promo, and this is definitely some dark, deranged, twisted stuff from Tatum Paxley. Basically, just alluding to the fact that she was only ever with Lyra because she was the champion. And once she lost the championship, she had no use for her anymore. Really dark stuff here. I highly recommend you try to find it on social medias. Watch the promo. From there, we go to women's action, and we get Lola Vice taking on Sol Ruca. And this was a fantastic women's match here. I really was expecting for Sol Ruca to pick up the victory here, because ever since she returned from her injury at the hands of Blair Davenport, she has just been on fire. People need to stop sleeping here. This is the second best women's division in the States behind the TNA Knockouts division. Blair Davenport came out and made an appearance, tripped Sol Ruca up off the top rope. She ends up taking Lola Vice's big kick, and Lola Vice gets the victory here. Exactly, Emmanuel. That's more to the point of why I think they should have had the week off, because both men are going to be hurting next week, and Trick is in a cage match. So after the match between Sol Ruca and Lola Vice, Natalya appears on the Tron and tells Lola that in 2 weeks at Spring Breakin', they will be in the ring against each other in an NXT Underground match. Really excited to see this. I've seen a couple of Underground matches before through NXT. Never saw the Raw Underground ones. I wasn't watching during that era. But I've seen a couple of NXT Underground matches, and I'm looking forward to seeing Natalya and Lola do this type of match. This is either going to be tremendous match of the year type quality, or it's going to be a complete and utter shit show. And when I factor in Lola's martial arts training and background and Natalya's submission style, coming through the dungeon, only female graduate of the dungeon, Hart Legacy, I have high hopes for this match. We then get a video from NXT Anonymous, and we see Ridge Holland and Ava just kind of walking and talking. Joaquin Wilde comes in and approaches Ridge, start an exchange there, and Ridge pushes Joaquin Wilde up against a wall. I'm not sure if this was supposed to be a haha at the AEW All In footage that we saw last week, but either way, it sets up a match between the two men for later in the evening. But before we get to that match, we get Ariana Grace and Gigi Dolan sitting in a park and conversing. We haven't really seen Grace and Gigi interact a whole lot ever since Gigi lost the match and the stipulation. And they're just kind of talking, and Gigi basically, like, reluctantly agrees to go with Ariana Grace shopping to try to find some clothes to help beautify her. More on that momentarily. We then get Ridge versus Joaquin Wilde, and this was a solid redemption match for Ridge. Joaquin got some offense in here, but it wasn't enough. Holland gets the victory. It's kind of weird to look now and see where the Brawling Brutes are, a year later. Sheamus just returned this week on Raw. Pete Dunne is back as Pete Dunne. He's dropped the Butch gimmick and is teaming with Tyler Bate again on SmackDown. And Ridge is in NXT. It'll be interesting to see if maybe the three of them interact with each other during the draft. Because that's the only thing I could see right now that would bring the three of them together for a segment. From there, we get Josh Briggs in the trainer's room. Got a couple of broken ribs, but he's cleared to compete. The breathing's just a little bit off. Ivar approaches him to kind of check up on him. And there's this exchange about how Briggs wants to go get a piece of Obafemi, but Ivar's like, no, take another couple weeks, rest your ribs. I'll fight Femi. And then once I become North American champion, I'll give you the first title shot. And Ivar's like, is that cool? And Briggs is like, absolutely not, because he wants Obafemi bad. So we end up getting a match made between Ivar and Briggs. From there we go, and we see Thea Hale and Andre Chase. And it starts off a little awkward because of the way that Thea ran out of the classroom last week. But Mr. Chase sits down, and Thea allows him to sit down. And basically, Mr. Chase answers Thea's question because she asks him, is what JC said true? And he tells her, yes, it is. And he lays out everything, how he was already in a little bit with the family and how he had this opportunity with Thea and he wasn't going to bet against Thea Hale. He's always going to have her back. He's always going to support her. He's always going to bet for her because he believes in her that much. And then he says that he saw the pain and the anguish on her face and the tears in her eyes in the match and the pain she was in. And in order to keep Thea from suffering, he threw in the towel because he said he would rather lose everything than have Thea get hurt. And of course, this calms Thea down some. She finds it as a very sweet gesture. The two embrace. And I'm not going to lie, we've been talking about Thea going heel. The expression on Andre Chase's face led me to believe that he may be going heel. And I'm not sure how I'd feel about a heel Mr. Chase either. I don't really know how we would parlay that. But I'm here for the story to keep developing. From there, we go to the D'Angelo family. They come to the ring and cut a promo. Tony D begins to talk, and the No Quarter Catch crew comes out. Because apparently the family helped the No Quarter Catch crew out in handling some business for them. It's very much alluded to the fact that the family took Drew Gulak out without saying as much. Drew Gulak hasn't been on TV the last few weeks. There's been stuff surrounding him when it pertains to Ronda Rousey that's been floating around the internet here the last few weeks since just before her book was about to come out. He hasn't officially been released by the WWE yet, but he's definitely being kept at a safe distance until they can figure out what's going on, because there's two completely different sides of the story here. Ronda says that he tried to grab at her drawstrings on her pants, and he says that he fell and he tried to grab her to brace his fall, and he didn't intend to touch her drawstrings or touch her in that area. He's apologized to her numerous times and was supposedly forgiven for it. And now all this stuff is coming up. So very interesting to see where things go with Drew Gulak from here, but it's heavily implied that the family took him out for the No Quarter Catch crew. But due to the animosity between the two families, we end up with a 6-man tag team match being made for Spring Breakin' next week. We then go to Ilya Dragunov and his open challenge. And again, it's the first person to meet him eye to eye in the ring is going to get the title shot. So here comes Lexis Keene. Here comes the entire NXT male locker room from the back coming down the entranceway. While all along, here comes this one individual from the crowd hopping the rail, jumping into the ring, springboarding off the top rope over Ilya to land. And it's the new kid, Javon Evans. And they proceed to put on a banger of a match. Really good showcase for Javon Evans, the young OG. Brought the fight to the Mad Dragon. However, it wasn't enough. For this week, the Czar still rules NXT, but with Ilya Dragunov being poised for a call-up during the draft, with the possibility that Ilya will be losing the title to Trick next week as part of Spring Breakin', the young OG has really cemented himself as a player in just these last couple of weeks. I expect to see big things from him in the not so distant future. From there, we go backstage and we see Carmen Petrovich and Lola Vice. And they're kind of going back and forth because Carmen, I guess, is going to be in Natalia's corner for the underground match. And Lola's like, wait till you see who I have in my corner. Definitely an interesting exchange here. I'm curious to see who Lola's corner person is going to be. From there, we go to Sol Ruka and Ava. And Ruka wants Blair Davenport in a no DQ match next week at Spring Breakin'. That match ends up getting made. We then get Thea Hale versus Tatum Paxley. This was a good but short match. Jasmine Ninks and JC Jane come out and distract Thea, cost her the match. Thea then tries to attack JC and Jasmine. She is just out for blood. Referees and security are trying to hold them back. All the while, here comes Lyra Valkyria, and she begins to attack Tatum, and they have to separate those two as well. The refs and the agents and everybody have to split up to try to break up two fights. Definitely seeing maybe Lyra versus Tatum at Battleground. But before we get to that, we get a Roxanne Perez promo, and she's talking about how Lyra and Tatum can settle their business, and whoever wins, maybe she'll give a title shot to. She was like, "This is easy. I don't know why Ava thinks that she's got such a hard job." And Ava comes in, and because of Roxanne's arrogance, makes it a triple threat match for next week on Spring Breakin'. Roxy versus Lyra versus Tatum. We then get the AOP versus Malik Blade and Idris Enofe. This was more or less a squash match here, but at the end of the match, Axiom and Nathan Frazier came out. Kind of cut to commercial there. No real interaction was had. So I'm wondering if it's planting the seeds for a potential match during week 2 of Spring Breakin'. Because you figure we've got both world titles on the line in week 1. So I'm thinking in week 2, we'll probably get the North American and the tag titles defended. And that's another reason why I think the world title match should be on week 2. Bump the North American title to week 1. But I'm just a fan. We then get another segment. This one is Ariana Grace and Gigi going shopping. Ariana finds this gorgeous gown that she thinks would be perfect for Georgina. And after a little bit of pouting, Gigi's like, "Well, we've got to make it my own, right?" And Ariana's like, "That's it. That's the spirit." So Gigi goes in the dressing room, and you start to hear the sound of rips and tears. And when she emerges, she's taken the gown. She's cut a slit up to the hip, really changed it up. It's just a phenomenal look on Gigi. Of course, we all know what this is going to end up building to. It's going to build to a match between the two. I'm guessing at Battleground. I think it's too soon to try to pull it off right now for Spring Breakin'. But eventually, we're going to build this up to a rematch between the two. We then get the Ivar versus Briggs match. And the match was good, but I don't feel like it did Briggs any favors, as Ivar got the victory here. You figure Briggs is trying to define his identity as a singles competitor, and you get this match, and Ivar just decimates him. I get the fact he's trying to sell the ribs and everything, and maybe if it turns into a feud and a series, maybe Briggs will get it in the end. But just on the surface, this match does 0 for Briggs. Ivar is up on Raw. Ivar's having banners up there and in and out of the Intercontinental title picture. What does he need to beat Briggs for? And if Briggs got the victory with damaged ribs, it would do more to propel him. After the match, they try to get a word from Obafemi, who all he says is interesting. He then walks off and takes out Oromensa in the process. Main event time. Steel cage match between Carmelo Hayes and Trick Williams. And match of the night. You know, this was just everything you would expect between these two men. Former friends, like brothers, now heated rivals. Again, Mello is more than likely going to get drafted up to the main roster here during the draft. So it does him absolutely no good to defeat Trick in this match. Meanwhile, Trick, going into his match with Ilya next week, the victory here helps propel him even further to the main event. This was just a really good match. Very well told story within the confines of the cage. Okay, looks like we're back. Sorry about that. I was seeing the signal on my StreamYard dipping, so I didn't want to have you guys complain about me going re-row here. So that's why I held up for a second there. But yeah, fantastic main event. Great story told. I'm looking forward to seeing what comes of Trick next week versus Ilya. If Mello's going to get involved, I'm curious to see where Mello goes from here, if he gets drafted or not. All in all, both shows that we discussed today were very solid. I would give NWA Powerrr probably a 7 out of 10, and I'd give NXT an 8.5 out of 10. Both brands just brought some really good stuff here today. What did you guys think of NXT and NWA Powerrr? Let me know. Leave your thoughts in the comments. I am going to run the watch along trailer here real quick. Again, I have not been able to update it and add the two New Japan shows to the trailer yet. As some of you guys may have seen on social media yesterday, I had to cancel Inside the Mind of the Renegade that was supposed to air yesterday due to circumstances beyond my control. Also prevented me from getting that made, but it should be taken care of today now that things have calmed down and a little bit situated around here. So that being said, I'm going to run the watch along trailer, then we'll get back and do the shills.
And now, preview time. So let's take a look at what's coming your way.
Here we go again!
And we are back. Again, want to just take this opportunity to thank everybody for joining me and tuning in today. It does mean a lot. Ignore the fact that it says Tuesday on the graphic. Now that things have calmed down, today, noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, we will be going inside the mind of the Renegade to discuss what I was going to discuss yesterday as far as AEW goes. Is AEW a sinking ship? Is it dead? And what would I do to try to patch up the holes and redirect the ship to something that could potentially be a lot more successful than what it currently is? Of course, make sure you tune in at 4 o'clock Pacific, 7 o'clock Eastern today for the Greg Cherry Show. Greg Cherry, Matty Laws will have their typical conversations and shenanigans. And then tomorrow, same bat time, same bat channel. Make sure you tune in to For the Love of Wrestling as I give you guys my AEW Dynamite review for tonight's episode. That is going to just about do things today. Thank you all for joining me again and tuning in. And until noon, when we go inside the mind of the Renegade, I will see you guys next time.
The Jeff Meacham Network's Multiverse of Media. For over 15 years, the recognized symbol of excellence and the standard bearer in coverage of sports and entertainment.
Thank you, JJ. Appreciate you.